of things is my only thing. So
okay, and then okay. Give me 1 second here as we go live. And great. It looks like we're live on YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. I am going to copy and paste the meeting notes into chat. Feel free to add yourselves to the attendees list if you haven't already. We have a pretty small agenda today. Only the 2 items that essentially we've been talking about for a little while now have been added here. So essentially workspace, the workspace discussion that's been ongoing and sort of the strategy there with, hosting and shared dependencies. Also, quick note, announcements. NPM went to general availability. NPM 7 went to general availability yesterday. So it's now considered latest and will be what you get when you NPM install -g NPM. So that's big congrats to the whole team. And this has been a bit, a year and a half in the making. So that's amazing. We're looking for lots of feedback. Just before this call, we had a bit of a discussion that we'll queue up here in a second about that. So just quick, again, code of conduct acknowledgements. These calls and all discourse in the RFCs is covered under the NPM's code of conduct. Just please be kind and mindful as we're talking. Please raise your hand if somebody else is talking and you want to provide some feedback. And yeah, so we're still looking for new RFCs. We'll be doing a bit of a cleanup here soon as well with some legacy RFCs. I know that there's still some outstanding items that got approved that sort of have changed or been essentially amended or should be amended by RFCs that we've now approved. Yeah, but I want to open up the floor first for Jordan to give maybe a recap of some of the feedback he was giving from NPM 7 and sort of the experience that you've had. Also, Wes, I'm not sure if you've had time to play with it or see any feedback, but would love to hear sort of thoughts, feelings.
So first of all, congrats. NPM 7 going to latest is a big deal. I have hundreds of packages that automatically install the latest supported NPM in CI. And at the moment, I'm only aware of one package where auto updating to NPM 7 caused issues. And that's like astoundingly low. So that's great. So what I wanted to talk about was that one package just to kind of get thoughts. It may or may not be an issue in NPM. So there were kind of 2 problems. One was that this is a package, this is an ESLint plugin. So it tests multiple versions of ESLint. And but one of the things it also tests is multiple parsers. And in this example, ESLint less than 5 is supported, but the TypeScript ESLint parser requires ESLint 5+. So during my CI script that tried to downgrade ESLint, NPM 7 errors out because it's a peer dep violation. I looked around, but there's no satisfying solution. So I ended up just using the legacy peer deps setting to bypass that. So thank you for making that available, even though I still believe that the default should be stronger peer dep enforcement. The escape hatch is necessary, and I'm glad it's there. The second problem is really interesting. So this ESLint plugin is a root package with sub packages in directories. The way CI works in this package is some of the jobs run npm install and tests in the root, and some of them run install in the root, run a script which like copies .files down to the sub packages, and then CDs into the sub package, installs, and runs its tests. And this has worked fine for many years. And it turns out that when the root node modules is present and was installed with npm 7, the sub packages, one of the sub packages tests fails. When the root node modules is absent or was installed with npm 6, the sub package passes just fine. And this is true whether the sub package was installed with npm 6 or 7. So I have it very well might be a problem with the way the repo is set up. And if so, like, great, as soon as I figure it out, I'll fix it. But this does illustrate a difference, and between 6 and 7, and of which some are expected, right? And I generated a lock file for both npm versions and diffed them, and the gist of that diff has been provided, and it's in the issue I linked in the chat as well. So if anyone has any ideas, I would be ecstatic if this were just a missing dependency or something, or But my current workaround is going to end up being, if I don't have a real solution, in CI for this package, downgrading npm from 7 to 6 so that I can unblock PRs and releases and stuff. However, I'd rather not do that because that feels like brushing it under the rug, and this might actually be reflective of a real problem that consumers using npm 7 will see. And so my hope is that in as short a time frame as practical, we can figure out for sure whether this is my bug or npm's, because it's clearly one of those two. So yeah.
Right. So it was ES plugin import. I'm just
yes,
taking notes here from that.
ESLint plugin import.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. It does rings a bell. I do know that Arbor is is overly aware of what is the parent of a module. So it might be that something is tripping up that logic, and just assuming the current folder you're in is somehow tied to the root node module.
Interestingly, if I npm install in the root with npm 7, cd into the package, and npm install with npm 7, and then rmrf ... /node modules, everything passes. So the sub packages install is not the problem. I think the root package install is the problem, and theoretically the root package install shouldn't know about nested package JSONs below, like in subdirectories, right?
So, but
you might be right, but
the job failure here doesn't necessarily indicate even that it's missing a package, right? I mean, none of these errors.
It does not. It's just getting the wrong result. And I even, given that this is in the Webpack ESLint plugin import resolver, I tried to play around with which Webpack version was being installed, because also a new minor version of Webpack was released the same day npm 7 was promoted. So I played around with that as well. I even used the npm install -- before argument to try and pick a last known good date, and that is still breaking. So I am convinced that it is not related to the Webpack version. But yeah, it's giving me, it's essentially that the resolver is failing to resolve packages when the root npm 7 modules are present.
But it could be an error in the Webpack resolver that is just pre-existing and is now revealed through the new install.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. It could be a bug, an existing bug in the resolver that npm 7's layout reveals or exposes. I don't know which. I hope that's that, because then I can fix it quickly. But yeah, so we don't have to spend tons of time on the call digging into it.
Yeah.
Despite we have a light agenda, but I wanted to just bring it to folks' attention, because the issue of describing this is a pinned issue in that repo. So yeah, it'd be great to figure that out.
Wes noted that, and I'm not sure if it's true. Can you see the chat, Jordan? Is that the right CI or build that's failing? The one that was.
It is an example of the failure, yeah, and that's the one I linked from the pinned issue as well.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
no,
so
cool.
I've taken notes of both. We can definitely dig into that after the call and try to help figure out what the situation is there. But on the whole, you've had good experiences so far.
Yeah, the during the peer dep discussion, when I was talking to Isaac to try and find a better solution and ultimately failing, but it suggested that there is maybe a possibility of using overrides to not to use the peer dep validation, but hijack it for this one case. But that's not a feature that has materialized yet. So I'm hopeful that it will in the future.
Yeah, definitely something we want to bring, that and the registry protocol I've been talking about a lot internally. And so getting that work queued up is definitely high on the list there. So that sort of bleeds into the Next, did anybody else have any other announcements or anything else they want to share from last couple?
Well, maybe one thing that is worth mentioning, it recently materialized as npm diff. Finally got merged a little before the GA announcement. So there is that, yeah, especially package authors. You might want to check it out, yeah.
And I think you wrote a blog post that we can plug here, right?
True.
At some point, right? Okay, let me just take a note of that.
One thing, have you all been seeing some of the work Adam Baldwin's been talking about recently with the like Git dependencies, really anything that's not a registry spec dependency being like a common attack vector for a security standpoint? Have you seen this? He's blogged about it recently.
He had a blog post. Yeah.
Yeah, so I noticed that Isaac was talking. I found a behavior that I was trying to debug, and then Isaac was on Twitter talking about git dep handling, and something is happening in one of the trees that I am using Arborist on, which is causing prepare scripts to run on Git dependencies when you build ideal tree, not even reify. Build ideal tree. And this is pretty concerning for people like, so I know like Jordan is also using build ideal tree in the LS engines. And if that were to trigger a prepare script, first, that's pretty unexpected. Second, that's a big security vulnerability. And then why I brought that up in relation with Adam Baldwin's work is that, if he's starting to publicize that I think brings more attention to that vector. And so if we're starting to build tooling around these internal libraries, we should make sure that the story there is really solid and it's actually doing the things we expect, aka not running install scripts on build ideal tree. Yeah. So I don't know where he got to that, because I know he fixed a bug with like recursive prepare that that was happening, but I think that any prepare scripts running on a build ideal tree is
yeah, and you have the life cycle really post install, whatever. Yeah,
anything other than reify, right? Like if reify, at that point you've committed to installing the tree and running its scripts. But if you do any of the preparation of the tree steps and do that, like I understand why in some cases it is necessary to resolve the tree, but I also think that those cases are things we should probably explicitly not support. So the bug that I ran into is it ran a prepare script which tried to import the built file, and the built file didn't exist because it was a git dep. So the prepare script didn't run like for however they had structured the package. It's a deprecated package. It's really old, but it's just somewhere in this tree that I was trying to install. And like it failed in a really unexpected way, because it just said like your prepare script failed, cannot import indexed, or main, the package JSON doesn't have a main that we can require, or like it was some error like that. And it took a while to track down because it was a deep transitive, and it was a deep transitive in a git dep. So you had to like, track down what commit the git dep was installing and all sorts of other steps. And this was like a, what's it called? WDIO. It's like the WebDriver ecosystem. So, I don't know how popular those packages are on the public registry, but if this is going to surface in an npm install, or other tooling like we were mentioning that uses build ideal tree but doesn't reify, like that's probably going to crop up somewhere.
So I'm just taking notes again.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Yeah, I would like to dig down more on why it's running a prepare script at that point.
And just the beginning of that note, Wes, you were saying it doesn't seem to be enforcing ignore scripts, like false, essentially.
No, it does. Okay, so I haven't been
build
able to
ideal
make
tree, right?
I haven't made the reduced test case yet, and if I can get to reduced test case, I can try passing ignore scripts. The install completely doesn't work if I do that, and it's because of an unrelated thing in the particular tree that I'm trying to install. The worry that I have is that build ideal tree specifically is when it's installing the git dependency into the cache, it runs the prepare script in the cache directory.
I see.
Right. Which subsequently fails with particular.
Yeah. It definitely makes me think that it's something in Pacochi, right? Like, especially because that fix was in Pacochi. That, yeah. And Pacochi happens, like it's going to fetch all these during the build ideal tree step. So that would kind of make sense. Like the dots kind of connect there, but definitely need to dig down some more into the internals.
And I just knew sort of anecdotally that Adam had posted that blog post. I haven't had a chance to read through it myself specifically, but I know there's a couple other security related topics that I think Wes, you and I are gonna sync up on after this call. But yeah,
I think the git dep thing is just really interestingly problematic because it's unclear sometimes like what should work. So I think a lot of packages in the ecosystem that use it, like ESLint even had a git dep in its latest release at one point. I don't know if it still does, but like they're prevalent enough that the fact that it's unclear what we should expect out of those, and that we're seeing some odd behaviors in npm 7's handling of it is something I think we should make sure we have a full understanding of before they start cropping up. Especially as security issues. Yeah.
Okay, so I've made some good notes there. Anything else that has come up in the last week or so since we last talked? I know. So Roy, I think Diff did land on Thursday or Friday. So that was after our last call. I don't think there was anything else that would have landed in the last. You would have seen actually day one patch release as well. So announcement there was, I kept joking that we're kind of like game developers. So day one patch was inevitable, at least for the NPM v7 going the latest. So yeah, feel
it's
free
better
to
than Cyberpunk.
Right, our patch was a little bit better, right? Still works on legacy systems without we didn't throw your dependencies up in the air and game breaking.
Yeah, there's no project breaking experiences right now. I guess there's a few, but anyway, I'll stop. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm helping.
I want to. Yeah, I was very excited to potentially get that game, and I can't make any jokes because I haven't seen like all the issues with it. Just heard anecdotally. So cool. So let's dive into the two items we have. Are essentially they're one item, and this is similar. I outlined a pretty good agenda last week. Unfortunately, I know Jordan, you weren't able to be there, and we can sort of maybe even rehash some of the sentiments and some of the conversation that was had. I'll try to pull up the meeting notes from that. But yeah, maybe Roy, if you can even speak, since these are both your issues, maybe you can speak to just like state of the world and some of the conversations that we're having around workspaces and sort of like a reevaluation of the way they're implemented today in terms of like linked ups. Maybe you can just high level where we're at today and what we're looking to maybe change.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So yeah, because today workspaces are basically same as same links using file column protocol in your package JSON. So it's pretty much just linking them to your root node module and then makes sure it's available to be used anywhere, right? As you can require them from anywhere within your project. So, but it's also very simplistic, and we had some users some feedback that it's kind of limiting. And one of I think the important ones we were trying to tackle recently was the no heist. I think the limitation there is being able to run certain scripts, like certain types of projects depend of having the node modules at the same level of that workspace. So yes, there is that. And so right now what we have here queued up for the RFC discussion is also adding more features to the workspaces, such as being able to run commands across workspaces or in a specific one. And yeah, so basically there is that one, which is kind of like part 2 follow-up from the original workspaces work. And the second one that kind of triggered this reevaluation, rethinking of how workspaces are installed is this RFC issue here that basically asks us to support more than just Semver ranges in order to replace something with a workspace. So these are basically the 2 issues in the agenda here. And it's kind of a little bit of state of the world, yeah. I think part 2 follow-up is definitely implementing the commands, implementing the missing workflows to work with workspaces. And after that, we jump into this conversation a little bit more about changing some of the fundamentals. So yeah, so with that said, maybe someone wants to pick up and add some comments. I also have some comments, but I would leave you go first. Yeah, go ahead, Wes. Oh, you're
muted. Sorry. I saw you in there chatting with the folks from Google on what they're doing in Release Please. And I think that's an excellent example of a workflow that should probably just be built into NPM. Like there, he had a proof of concept using Lerna, but I think getting a sane handle on dependency updates in a monorepo like that would be excellent. Also, I would very much use it, so it'd save me a bunch of work. Yeah, hi, baby.
So sorry, the feedback there, Wes, is having those use cases like outlined is good.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't think the use case that was happening in the Slack that was being posted with the work being done in Release Please, I think has not been explicitly covered in any of the workspaces yet. So it would just be good to like outline exactly what we intend to support there.
Yeah, I was scrolling back to find that discussion, and I think it was about, because it's something very similar to what you guys have been digging into, having just an in-memory kind of like representation of the install tree. So I think it definitely resonates with.
I think you could actually circumvent the need for what they're doing entirely if you just did this as an NPM feature. So like what they're trying to do is just do automated PRs updating dependencies across the entire monorepo, right? And the fact that there's not like a really good, clear, explicit workflow there, I think is the problem trying to be solved. And the reason they need that underlying feature of the package tree and memory and all that is sort of not really the point if they could just run an NPM command and get an updated workspace, out of a single command.
Yeah, I think in general, especially like, with both GitHub and NPM and all the different things that like we have kind of access to, there's so many different great things that we could start exploring on, improving releases as a whole. Release Please, I think is just like fantastic work, and I think it's super cool. And so yeah, I guess like one of the big challenges in my mind is definitely finding that balance between like doing things that are NPM specific versus generic to like releases as a whole. Things that make sense when, I don't know the exact number, but like so many of these NPM projects are actually tracked on GitHub. So if you're going to use like GitHub Actions to this, like how do we make that better? And there's so many different things that we're poking at there. And so I guess what I would say, Wes, in general is like the more that you can surface like some of these release processes, and maybe you and I just catch up offline on this, offline about this as well. As someone who has been in the release mines before and has the scars to prove it, this is a space that I really care about. And I think like another part of it too is also like, you know, there's like the creating and there's also the like consuming. So thinking about like, how do we present releases to people? Like we just did great work with the TypeScript information and the per release downloads. And we're going to keep thinking about like, what are ways that we improve this consumption scenario for folks as well? And so if you have ideas in there, we're always open to hearing them.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And I think the value add here could be really big if we can go beyond just the, you know, GitHub release please. Like not only would it help things like, you know, release please just operationalize better and have less custom one-off, you know, things they need. But I think the tooling there can be pretty generic and solve, because like we're not on GitHub, so like we can't use those things. Like we can't use release please. I'd love to, but like I can't convert, you know, all of Netflix to that until we move to move to GitHub. And so like finding that balance has been really difficult. And I imagine most, you know, there are many engineering orgs that are in a similar boat where like it's all great and well to say like, yeah, look, release please, go use it, but you just can't. But so having some base tooling that maybe doesn't go as far as release please, but still supports some of those workflows, like with workspaces and, you know, dependency updates and stuff, you know, that would still move the needle quite a bit. So,
yeah. I think what you were speaking to as well, Wes, if I remember the conversation now correctly, was they were looking for essentially like an API from Arbris to surface the package JSONs of workspaces and or list out the workspaces in a project programmatically so that they could then do something else unique or right?
Well, I think all they want to do is update the Semver ranges,
yeah,
which is like, again, is like, this should just be what NPM does. Like, why don't we just run NPM update workspace and have it like,
but dogfooding that API. Yeah, like we just don't, I don't think we have the API for us to give you that, or we don't have it to do it a synthetic way. We still pass. So like everything's predicated on like the prefix and like the directory, whereas like I know you've asked in the past, and I think that this is definitely something we should support is the like synthetic creation of like a package JSON that gets passed in and then you get returned, right?
For what it's worth, one of the main reasons why I've asked for that in the past is the same exact user workflow. So like I have a tool that literally goes and builds a synthetic package, you know, tree of package JSONs and says, which ones do I want to update? Okay, these are the ones. And I apply some special rules to it and logic that, you know, I would never, maybe not never expect NPM to do, but you know, it's custom stuff. So I'm fine with that living outside of NPM. But if just the base workflows of you know, providing some, like being able to load this up in memory, apply some very light changes to it, and then write it to disk, if that was something I could do with some, you know, NPM tooling and not have my own, a whole ton of extra work to do that on my own, big win, right? And that, again, that's the same thing they're doing in the release please work that they were asking about the other day, so.
Right. Okay. Definitely improvements to be made on that. I think
just the workflow as described sounds a lot like just using refi with an update option, right? Like that you can specify what packages to update. And
yeah, it is. And that it does almost work. So again, I think, you know, on a, I haven't tested what they were trying to do in release directly. So the things I'd love to know if when they tried just running, you know, it with NPM 7, like did it fail in some particular way that caused them to go the Lerna, you know, package route? Like maybe there's something that we're unaware of. I know the projects that I've tried it on, I think it seemed to work. I just don't have the fine-grained control that I needed. So like we're doing some things where I needed to, after I applied that update, also generate like a nice display that I'm going to submit with the PR, and I like pull in some things like I generate diff links for all of the top level packages. I also don't do, I do deep updates for internal packages, but not external. Like there's a bunch of these little things where if we could better support that with just NPM update, like instead of having to go deep into Arborist like I'm doing or use Lerna like they're doing, I think that would be great. And I don't have an explicit RFC for this. Like I wanted to start rolling this out internally and see what roadblocks I hit before I proposed anything. But I do think that the fact that they're working on it, I'm working on it, and you are looking at what improvements we need to make to workspaces seems like this is a timely, would be a timely topic to sync on. So.
Yeah, and I think sort of I think we can actually get started with the work here without necessarily needing to know the API shape. The thing that we really have been digging in on is more so the way that like workspaces are linked. But like the conversation that I think like we should be considering like is very important is like how, like what do you get access to when you essentially define a workspace, and like how do those dependencies get resolved, and like what are the strategies or like improvements we should be making or changes we should be making to how that's implemented today, because that will then affect the implementation of running commands or these other sort of APIs, right? Because
Yeah.
I almost feel like we know exactly what, not exactly, but we know like how, you know, you can imagine the API to look like today for running commands and in workspaces. So like filtering, etc. Like we've had that conversation now for a long time, and like there's prior art with Lerna, there's prior art with Yarn v1. So it's kind of like, you know, do we like, or are there limitations to the way that we've implemented workspaces and treating them like link depths today? If we keep going down that route, like, are we going to have problems? As Jordan has mentioned many times, do we want to explicitly start to define, you know, shared versus not shared dependencies instead of this concept of like hoisting and not hoisting? Because again, you know, that's a part of this conversation as well once we get into like, you know. So those are the things that I think that like we should be focused on and talking through and getting some consensus around. And then like these other sort of like, these are the easier parts. Like literally the components are all there. It's almost like do this right now, right? So like the folks at Release Please or yourself like have already written, you know, something to work around it. So it'd be really quick for us to build once we've maybe got consensus on these harder things, which are like the, yeah. And Jordan, I see you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, just I think it's very important that NPM provide the only non-broken workspaces implementation that exists. And I think it would really help the ecosystem a lot, because I think that there's almost anyone who's done workspaces like work runs into hoist/no hoist type problems or bugs related to it, or they just throw up their hands and they like throw everything in the same dependencies block and don't even care about depths versus depths anymore. And you know, I think that's also a loss to kind of funnel people there. So I would really like to see us try and solve this problem. It'd be great if we could do it in a Semver minor way where we just add like a mode, and if not, there's always npm 8.
Yes, which brings me to some of the ideas I wanted to share, and maybe I can give some quick feedback on it. Because yeah, I was thinking about all these things together, and I kind of do feel like the part 2 of workspaces support, being able to run commands across workspaces, all the stuff, everybody that's kind of trying out workspaces in NPM right now, they're kind of complaining about, oh yeah, well, how do I just run tasks? Like, oh yeah, okay. So people are figuring out, oh yeah, you can just define the prefix as the workspace, and then you can run the test there, right? So yeah, all these things said. What was I thinking? Oh no, evasion. Yeah, but basically, yeah, maybe I was thinking just that work is more about defining those APIs so that we can just have a way to running these commands, having a way to work with workspaces. And that kind of can be adjusted if you change the way that workspaces are installed internally. And then maybe we can hold on to NPM 8 to do maybe big shifts in the way the workspaces are installed. So still following along, I think.
Yeah, so
makes sense.
So I kind of agree. I agree with you that the behavior changing, the default behavior changing can't happen until the next major. But then I also agree with Jordan in terms of we could potentially provide configuration to change this in a minor or like an opt-in change. And I liken this, and I've said this many times, and I've actually been, and I can say this, I've been working with some folks internally at who are working on like M365, who have very large workspace project, and they're trying to move over to NPM. They also want, they need, not want, they need, you know, the ability to essentially scope and have more strictness in the way that the dependencies are being, let's say, installed and shared. And so they don't want hoisting. They don't want the current behavior to happen, or what we call hoisting. And so, and I've said this multiple times, we already have flags to change the behavior here. Legacy bundling and global style are two flags right now that I look at and I go, oh, somebody's opting into a different behavior and you know, yeah, like style essentially, and different strategy. And so I think that us introducing something that's a new opt-in feature for changing this and adding some strictness, and we can call them strategies, you can call them whatever you want to call them. I think that can be added in a minor. We don't have to wait until the next major to introduce that, right? And yeah, sorry, Wes, I see your hands up, and then Jordan, I know.
Just to follow on to this, so I think in a minor behind a configuration would be excellent. I think one of the hard parts when 7 was rolling this stuff out, you know, for me to go and get real, you know, insight into this at our organization was impossible. Like I was running NPM 7 on other people's projects, which doesn't really help much. Like all I was doing was seeing if it worked. But since I'm not working day in, day out with it, I couldn't really give that solid feedback on whether or not it worked for the workflows they used in their workspaces. So having it in a minor would be great. Especially if we can have it, you know, I mean, and I think this would just be par for the course, but have it in a config variable, which we could set in the NPM RC so that all users, they could just roll it out as a feature for the entire team. Because then we'd be able to get real user feedback. Because like, right, the challenge I'm having right now is like, I have to ask them to switch from Yarn to NPM 7.2. It's not even like we're going from a, you know, we're changing their muscle memory, right? Because they're used to typing yarn this, yarn that. So being able to get this without them not only having to go to NPM, but also have to go to a NPM 8 beta, like is not going to happen, right? Like, so I won't be able to give real user feedback. So anyway, that's my only take on it is that, you know, to get the real feedback we want, we're going to need a little bit of extra work, I think, there.
Jordan, did you have feedback? And then Roy, I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think There are many existing mono repo workflows out there, like it or not, because of the way tooling already works. I think that the vast majority of them would be able to transition from the current default mode to this new mode, and it would just work. It would do exactly what they think. But I think that it would be really disruptive for the subset of folks that are used to a less idiomatic monorepo workflow. If like it would be very disruptive to them if they couldn't upgrade to like npm 8, let's say, because it switched how this thing worked. So I think it's actually really important that it be Semver minor. And I think that the fact that, well, that if my intuition is correct, then the resulting fact that the majority of people would be able to use both modes equally well is actually, I think, endorses the new mode, because it means that they will just get better, more correct strictness that matches the way they're already authoring their workspaces. And they can just flip back and forth and try it and be like, yep, all the tests still pass. I guess we'll use the better version, right? And then like for the people that have a different workflow, we can just say in the docs, like, this is the workflow that this mode is expected to work with. If you don't have this workflow, stick with the default, right? Or like explicitly specify this mode, so when we switch the default in npm 8 or 9, like you know you aren't broken, right? So I think like as much as I have a large number of strong opinions about like the better way to do things, I think that it's really important and valuable to not screw over the people who deviate from that and provide configuration. So I hope that an option is the way we go.
Yeah, because I look at this as taking over. And go ahead, Roy, because I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I just maybe compliment. I think I also have a question to Jordan or any of you really. But basically, if we go this route of just having different strategy or different configuration that installs workspace in a better way. So maybe first question, those that fixes the no hoist use case, like by default, this correct sane way of handling workspaces. And if that's the case, or maybe it's not, like still for lifetime of npm 7, like I still think maybe by default we want to at least make the CLI be aware and respect the no hoist configuration that folks used to use in the RNV1, because that's probably what's gonna make like most of the projects in the ecosystem just work with workspaces out of the box, right? So be it just that having the no hoist will trigger this new install mode that we can start working on behind the configuration. So you could kind of like buy into the configuration for the entire project using a npm RFC config, or if it sees the no hoist there, just make sure that at least for that workspace, it's yeah. Go ahead, Jordan.
I do want to clarify that like a no hoist mode won't work. Like
won't work.
You can do it if you specify it. No, I'm saying that the current things that offer a no hoist, they specify it per package. So
yeah,
everything is hoisted by default, and then you specify which packages aren't.
Yes.
You could, whether you have that mode or the opposite, where nothing's hoisted and then you specify which are, you have to have both escape hatches, because the model is mismatched. Like you cannot apply the model without an escape hatch in either direction. So like a no hoist mode has to have a but hoist this stuff, and a hoist mode has to have a but no hoist this stuff, or it doesn't work.
Sure.
And we could do either of those in the meantime, but still hope we get the better solution that doesn't require any escape hatch.
I think when we looked at this before, we didn't like this at all. Like I remember us looking at how this was implemented in RV1, this array of like workspaces, and then inside of those workspaces, you defining not like this configuration as well. We didn't like if I say we, I'm saying broadly, and I think at the time, if I remember correctly, a lot of folks didn't like this. I know personally, I don't like this as an idea. Personally, I don't think this is, we want to support this. I don't think it seems very cumbersome on you to have to declare these things inside the workspaces. And yeah, I also just don't like, I've been trending, not trending, but like I'm thinking about this more and more. I think like yourself, Jordan, with like utilizing the hoisting nomenclature is like very like doubling down on it is not the right move here. I like the shared, not shared. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like today, we hoist and share. Like it's those two things. Like we actually do.
It's being used, right? So if you want to support, just make life easier for folks migrating their project, supporting, even if it's bad nomenclature, like supporting it helps out.
I don't think that, I'm not suggesting that we don't add a no hoist, a per package no hoist in the meantime, right? I just like, I just want to continue to insist loudly that it's like a Band-Aid on a broken system and not a solution. And as long as we think of it that way, like, cool, you're right, Roy, we should help people migrate.
Yeah, I think people are going to get run into the problem that we're installing pure dependencies though. So if you're running in Yarn v1 workspaces and you're migrating to NPM workspaces, I mean, the prickly part isn't going to be the no hoist, as far as I know. They're going to run into the pure deps problem first. Yeah. Did you raise your hand, or is that Theo?
No, I'm being reaction bombed here.
I'm sure he has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion about workspaces.
All right, yeah, I guess maybe the more actionable thing, like that we can maybe settle on is, do you think it's a good idea to maybe start working on the story of running commands across workspaces before we have that definition? Or, because I do, but I want to also kind of feel the sentiment.
I think so, because I think we have a pretty clear understanding of what users need here. So doing that and swapping out the implementation under the hood once we have a decision there enables both the, like, let's test this out in a minor, right? Lets you sort of work on what I see as the most immediately impactful workflows without having to, you know, lift and shift the entire ecosystem here. So I'm a fan of that. And I don't think, even if it might change in some of the edge cases and how the handling works, we're already planning on breaking the paradigm. So like, actually, if we have some people on these use cases, we can then test out breaking the paradigm with them and make sure that it works in a reasonable way. So,
but also the what I'm envisioning with this new mode is just a superior node modules layouts. And so I would assume and expect that all user interface like stuff, NPM command invocations would be identical and would do the identical thing. It's just a question of what node modules are available during that running of those commands, or like what are installed by those commands. So like, if we think that'll be different, I think it's very important that we call that out early.
Yeah, I think given that it's unknown and there's a lot more, it seems like that is the thing that's going to be a lot more of our time than getting out like in the next month or so. If Roy starts to work on this, or other folks on our team start to work on the the more complex workflows, just like running commands in workspaces, just flushing that out and getting that out. And I think that's the easier part. And like, it would be good and useful for we shouldn't block on it, is what I'm saying. We shouldn't block on this other thing that is going to be introduced probably in a new flag or configuration. I really like, and I've documented in notes here, you've said a couple times, Jordan, I don't know if you've said it before, but modes are I've been calling them strategies in the past, but I like modes as well. So
however we want to spell it.
You just want, I want this thing. I don't care how it's like, I want flag. I need to get it, but okay. So just be mindful, we only got a couple minutes left. Is there anything else we should wrap up here, other than it sounds like we have some consensus that we should go off and continue to flesh out the workspace experience for folks today, even though we know that there's a larger conversation still going on with
And I think I would just color that by saying no hoist is something that doesn't make sense in the new mode, but doesn't conflict. And all of the other workspace command running things, I don't believe conflict at all and would work in both. So like, I think if we just are cognizant to, with all workspaces work, if we think about in the old mode and the new mode, what do we think? Like, then like, as long as it's not going to cause a problem for the other one, then there's no reason to block it. We should of course make the default mode that we're hopefully going to keep for a long time anyway. You know, like, so even if we ship this new better mode, I keep, you know, hoping for, like, I still think NPM should support both for a long time together. So like, we should make it better regardless.
Well, I appreciate everybody jumping on again today. I know we had a light agenda, but we were able to fill the time, so that's a good sign. Hopefully it was useful, and sounds like we actually, for me at least, I feel like we're a little bit unblocked to get to work here. We still have like a good amount of work to keep improving 7, but yeah, awesome. So we'll be back again next week. I'll try to be better with getting the agenda queued up earlier and get feedback and make sure that we have like a great discussion about what we want to talk about. Feel free to keep giving us feedback about V7 usage, and Jordan will circle back on that item you gave to us async in whatever Slack channel. Thanks. Awesome. I'll see you all soon.
All right. Thank you.